In the fading twilight of Tanzania's Rift Valley, where the earth splits apart in ancient wounds, 7 men prepare for a confrontation that will test every lesson learned across 50,000 years of survival. The Hadza, Earth's last true hunter-gatherers, know that darkness brings competitors for the day's prize, 1,000 pounds of buffalo meat that means life or death for their families. 7 men, armed with nothing but primitive bows, faced 20 of Africa's most ruthless killers, creatures with jaws that could snap a buffalo's leg like a twig. The warriors were outnumbered nearly 3 to 1, yet, when the sun rose, the hunters still stood. Think about this for a second. 20 hyenas can tear apart a full-grown lion in minutes. 7 men shouldn't have survived 20 seconds. This wasn't just about meat. It was about whether humanity's oldest hunters could still dominate nature's apex scavengers. By the end of this video, you'll understand how ancient survival wisdom trumped overwhelming odds in the most primal battle ever witnessed. I'm about to reveal 3 things that changed everything that October night. First, the secret weapon that turned prey into predator. Second, why the hyena's greatest strength became their fatal weakness. And third, the moment when ancient tactics saved modern lives. How could this happen? How could men with Stone Age weapons defeat nature's most successful pack hunters? The warriors' poisoned arrows were designed for small antelope, not 400-pound bone crushers with skulls thick as armor. How did exhausted warriors outlast creatures that can run for hours without stopping, that can digest bones and hooves, that fear nothing in the darkness? What made the hyena matriarch, a battle-scarred leader of 20 loyal killers, suddenly retreat when victory seemed certain? And here's the most puzzling part. Why did the warriors deliberately let some hyenas get close enough to bite, close enough to use those massive jaws that generate 1,100 pounds per square inch of crushing force? The youngest warrior among them, barely 16 years old on his first major hunt, would make the shot that changed everything. A shot that shouldn't have been possible in the flickering firelight, through smoke and chaos, with death laughing from every shadow. To understand how 7 men survived what kills lions, we must first understand the killers themselves. If you're fascinated by humanity's most primal battles for survival, where ancient wisdom clashes with nature's deadliest killers, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories of human endurance. Now, let me transport you to the Tanzanian night, where death laughed in the darkness. The Hadza people are Earth's last hunter-gatherers, their ways unchanged for 50,000 years. No agriculture, no permanent homes, no chiefs or formal leaders, just pure survival knowledge passed through countless generations. These aren't weekend warriors or survival hobbyists. These are humans who never left the arena where our species learned to dominate. Every Hadza child learns to track before they can properly run. Every adult can craft a bow from scratch, identify dozens of poison plants, and read the savanna like you read your phone screen. But on this October night in Tanzania's Rift Valley, the very cradle where humanity first stood upright, they would face nature's most misunderstood killers. Forget everything Disney taught you about hyenas. These aren't cowardly scavengers or bumbling comic relief. Spotted hyenas are brilliant tacticians with a bite force that surpasses lions and tigers. They hunt in coordinated packs with complex strategies. They can digest bones, hooves, even teeth. Their matriarchal society operates with military precision, and their success rate in hunts exceeds that of any big cat. The Tanzanian Rift Valley at night belongs to them. This is where tectonic forces ripped Africa apart, creating a landscape of rocky outcrops, acacia thorns, and vast grasslands where predator and prey have danced their deadly ballet for millions of years. The darkness here isn't just absence of light, it's a living thing that hides terror. Meet the 7 warriors who would face that terror. Morani, the leader at 41, had survived 60 major hunts, but carried scars from the night hyenas killed his father. Gudo, just 16, clutched his grandfather's bow with hands that barely stopped shaking. Themba, the dog handler, commanded 5 African hunting dogs, descendants of wolves that chose humanity over the wild. Old Kessie at 61 could track a ghost through stone. Silent Nuru, mute from birth, communicated through whistles that could coordinate a hunt or a battle. Duma kept the fires burning, a job that sounds simple until you realize fire is all that stands between you and jaws in the darkness. And Kitchi, the arrow master, who knew exactly which plants produced poisons that could drop an elephant or merely paralyze a rabbit. Their enemy that night was led by a matriarch the locals had named Broken Ear, 180 pounds of scarred muscle and tactical genius. She commanded 20 loyal clan members, mostly female, each weighing between 100 and 150 pounds. This wasn't a random pack of scavengers. This was an organized army that had taken down everything from wildebeest to young elephants. They'd been watching the Hadza camp for days, studying patterns, waiting for opportunity. The power dynamics were clear. In raw strength, the hyenas dominated. Their jaws could crush bones that would shatter a human skull like an egg. They could see in near total darkness, run at 60 kilometers per hour, and maintain that speed longer than any human athlete. They operated with perfect pack coordination, using complex vocalizations, those famous laughs, to communicate hunting strategies. But humans had something else. We had fire, tools, and 50,000 years of accumulated wisdom about surviving nights exactly like this one. What happened when these two apex predators collided would challenge everything we think we know about the balance of power in nature. The stage was set in a rocky outcrop 30 meters across. Surrounded by thorn bushes the Hadza had carefully arranged as barriers. 7 small fires created overlapping circles of light. In the center, wrapped in acacia leaves, lay their prize, 1,000 pounds of fresh buffalo meat. But on this October night, 2 apex predators would collide over a prize worth dying for. The successful buffalo hunt that afternoon had been a triumph. After tracking the old bull for 3 days through the scorching Rift Valley heat, the warriors had finally brought him down near a seasonal waterhole. 1,000 pounds of meat, enough to feed their band of 50 people for 2 weeks. They'd worked frantically to butcher the carcass before sunset, knowing that darkness would bring competitors. Every hunter in the Hadza band had roles assigned by experience, not hierarchy. Morani had made the killing shot, his poisoned arrow finding the sweet spot behind the bull's shoulder. Young Gudo had proven his worth by tracking the wounded animal through thick brush for 2 hours. Now, as darkness fell, they faced the hardest part, defending their prize through the night. The warrior profiles revealed a perfect combination of skills. Morani, the de facto leader, possessed an almost supernatural ability to predict animal behavior. His father's death to hyenas 20 years ago had driven him to study every aspect of their hunting patterns. He knew that hyenas always tested defenses before committing to full attack. Themba, the dog handler, commanded 5 African hunting dogs with hand signals and whistles. These weren't pets, they were partners, bred for millennia to work alongside humans. Each dog weighed about 60 pounds but possessed teamwork that could challenge predators twice their size. Old Kessie, the tracker, could read signs invisible to younger eyes. He'd already identified hyena spoor from 3 different directions. The clan was positioning for a coordinated assault. But here's what the textbooks won't tell you. The hyena clan structure made them far more dangerous than random predators. The matriarch, Broken Ear, ruled with absolute authority. Her distinctive torn left ear came from a battle with a leopard that she'd won. She'd given birth to 42 cubs over 15 years, creating a loyal army bound by blood. Her subordinates included her 3 adult daughters, each commanding their own hunting parties. The males, smaller and lower ranking, served as scouts and first-wave attackers. This wasn't a mob. It was a military unit with 2 million years of tactical evolution. The tactical geography favored defense, but only if the warriors used it perfectly. The rocky outcrop rose 10 feet above the surrounding grassland, providing high ground advantage. Thorn barriers created from wait-a-bit acacia formed a maze that would funnel attackers into kill zones. The Hadza had learned over generations that thorns wouldn't stop hyenas, but they would slow them down, breaking up coordinated charges. 7 fires burned at strategic points, creating overlapping fields of light, while leaving specific shadows where archers could remain unseen. The buffalo meat sat in the center, partially buried to slow scavenger birds, but accessible enough to create temptation. Then something happened that defied 2 million years of evolution. The dogs sensed them first. At 8:45, all 5 hunting dogs suddenly oriented northeast, hackles raised, lips curled back to reveal teeth evolved for gripping, not crushing. The warriors knew these warning signs. Hyenas typically announced their presence with whooping calls that could travel 5 kilometers, but tonight, silence. That meant one thing. They were already in position, already watching. Pattern interrupt. What the warriors didn't know was that this clan had recently lost a territorial battle with lions, leaving them desperate and unusually aggressive. Hunger would make them take risks their instincts normally prevented. The equipment detail mattered more than most people realize. Each warrior carried 20 to 25 arrows. their bamboo shafts tipped with metal points hammered from scavenged car parts. The poison came from desert rose sap mixed with beetle larvae, a combination that attacked the nervous system. But here's the crucial detail. The poison was calibrated for 60-pound antelope, not 150-pound hyenas. The spears, fashioned from straight acacia branches, extended 2.5 meters, just long enough to keep those bone-crushing jaws at bay, theoretically. Each warrior also carried a knife, but in close combat with a hyena, a knife was more psychological comfort than practical weapon. The first sign came at 9:15, a pair of eyes reflecting green in the firelight, 40 meters out, then another pair, then 10, then 20. The hyenas had surrounded them completely, cutting off any escape route. Young Gudo's hands trembled as he nocked his first arrow. Themba whispered commands to his dogs, holding them back from their instinct to charge. The buffalo meat, all 1,000 pounds of it, suddenly seemed like both prize and trap. As the first pair of eyes reflected in the firelight, everyone knew negotiation was impossible. 9 o'clock, first came the distant howls, not the famous laughter, but long, mournful sounds that raised every hair on human necks. The Hadza knew this vocalization. It was the clan's rally call, summoning scattered members for coordinated action. By 9:30, the howls had stopped. Silence pressed against the circle of firelight like a physical force. 10 o'clock brought visual contact. 20 pairs of eyes now formed a perfect circle around the outcrop, each reflecting the firelight like green stars in the darkness. The matriarch herself remained invisible, but old Kessie pointed to disturbed grass patterns that showed her location, directly upwind, where she could smell everything, while revealing nothing. The initial probes began at 10:15. A young male hyena, probably 2 years old and eager to prove himself, crept toward the eastern thorn barrier. The warriors let him come. 40 meters, 30, 20. At 15 meters, Morani's arrow whispered through darkness. The shot was deliberately placed, not a kill shot, but a warning that struck dirt inches from the hyena's paws. The young male yelped and retreated, but the critical intelligence was gathered. The clan now knew the warrior's range. But the hyenas had made a fatal miscalculation. They assumed these were ordinary hunters, not Hadza warriors who'd been perfecting night combat since before agriculture existed. The warrior responses revealed decades of accumulated wisdom. Instead of wasting arrows on distant targets, they waited for optimal range. The dogs were deployed in a specific pattern, 2 flanking Themba, 3 positioned at the most vulnerable approach routes. These weren't attack formations, but early warning systems. The dog's superior hearing would detect any hyena trying to creep through blind spots. Here's where the story takes a savage turn. The clan's patience was extraordinary. For 2 hours, they maintained their circle, occasionally sending individual hyenas to test different angles. This wasn't random probing, it was systematic intelligence gathering. They were learning fire positions, counting warriors, identifying the weakest points in the thorn barriers. These tactics were borrowed from their lion hunting strategies, where patient coordination could overcome superior strength. At 11:28, first blood was drawn. A young female hyena, emboldened by hunger and her low rank that meant last access to kills, tried to dart through a gap in the northern barrier. Gudo, the 16-year-old on his first major hunt, had been assigned this sector precisely because it seemed least likely to face assault. But old Kessie had read the signs differently. He'd whispered to position the boy there. Knowing hungry subordinates take the biggest risks, the young hyena burst through thorns that tore at her hide, but didn't slow her charge. Gudo's arrow flew true, not from skill but from pure instinct. The poisoned point struck behind the hyena's shoulder, penetrating deep. She stumbled, confused as neurotoxins began their work. But here's what nobody expected. She didn't drop. Instead, she completed her charge, jaws snapping at air where Gudo had been standing before Morani yanked him aside. It took 4 minutes for the poison to finally stop her heart. 4 minutes of thrashing, snarling proof that their weapons were calibrated wrong. In that moment, prehistory collided with the present. The warriors realized their primary weapon was compromised. The poison that could drop an impala in 30 seconds merely slowed a hyena. They would need to adjust everything, aim for eyes and throat instead of body shots, use spears for killing blows, conserve arrows for only the most critical moments. What happened next would haunt every survivor. The dying hyena's distress calls triggered something primal in the clan. The patient circling stopped. Hyenas began vocalizing in rapid, complex patterns, Not their famous laughs, but sharp barks and whoops that coordinated movement. The grass rustled from 20 directions at once. The matriarch's massive form finally appeared at the edge of firelight, her broken ear clearly visible, her scarred muzzle revealing teeth worn from years of bone crushing. Then came the sound that changed the night. Not a hyena vocalization, but something far worse. From the southwest, answering whoops, another clan was responding to the distress calls. The warriors weren't facing 20 hyenas. Reinforcements were coming. The sensory explosion overwhelmed human nerves. Crackling fires threw dancing shadows that made every grass movement seem like an approaching killer. The dogs whimpered and snarled, their ancient programming conflicting with trained discipline. The stench of the dying hyena's fear musk mixed with smoke and human sweat. Every warrior's breathing quickened as adrenaline flooded. Systems evolved for exactly this moment, when early humans had to stand their ground or perish. At 11:43, the matriarch did something unprecedented. She stood fully upright on a termite mound, displaying her full-size, 180 pounds of scarred muscle and tactical intelligence. Her pose wasn't just intimidation. She was showing her clan that she would lead the assault personally. In hyena society, matriarchs typically commanded from safety. This signaled total commitment. The three subordinate females took positions precisely 90 degrees apart, north, east, and south. The western approach, blocked by the steepest rocks, would remain clear, or so it seemed. What the warriors didn't realize was that two young males were already scaling those impossible rocks, their claws finding purchase where human hands couldn't. At 11:47, 20 hyenas attacked simultaneously, and hell came to Tanzania. The first assault came from the east, 5 hyenas charging in perfect formation through the gap where their clanmate had died. But this was deception at its finest. These weren't the prime fighters, but younger males, expendable in the clan's harsh arithmetic. They charged loud and obvious, laughing their famous laugh, a sound that triggers primal fear because it means the hunter enjoys the killing. Morani and Kichi loosed arrows, while young Gudo fumbled with shaking hands. 2 arrows found marks, one in a shoulder, one grazing a skull thick as armor. The poisoned tips barely penetrated. The charging hyenas didn't even slow. Themba released 2 dogs to intercept. What followed wasn't combat but physics. 60 pounds of dog versus 120 pounds of hyena. The dogs went flying, yelping, but they'd done their job. The charge broke apart, hyenas scattering to avoid the snapping, regrouping dogs. But then, the real attack erupted. While every warrior focused east, the matriarch led 12 hyenas from 3 directions in coordinated assault. This is where biology textbooks get it wrong. Hyenas aren't just powerful, they're brilliant tacticians. The 2 males who'd scaled the western rocks dropped into the camp's heart. Suddenly, the warriors weren't defending a perimeter, but fighting in every direction. Duma, the firekeeper, saved them all in that instant. Instead of panicking, he grabbed a burning acacia branch and thrust it into the face of the nearest rock-climbing hyena. The creature's night-adapted eyes, evolved to gather every photon of starlight, recoiled from the blazing torch. What happened in the next 30 seconds changed everything. The matriarch's charge defied nature. 180 pounds moving at 40 kilometers per hour, aimed directly at the buffalo carcass. Warriors scattered or died. Morani stood his ground, spear braced against rock. Physics met fury as the matriarch hit the spear point. The acacia shaft, hard as iron from decades of growth, held for exactly 1 heartbeat before snapping like kindling. But that heartbeat let Morani roll aside as jaws that could crush buffalo bones snapped shut on empty air. Silent Nuru's whistles cut through chaos. Sharp, pitched calls that somehow reached human ears through hyena laughter. The warriors regrouped into pairs, back to back, spears outward, but the darkness hid something far worse. 10 hyenas had penetrated the camp simultaneously. The tactical geography that should have helped now trapped the warriors in close combat with creatures evolved to kill. The dogs faced their ancient enemies with suicidal courage. These weren't wolf descendants, softened by domestication, but partners shaped by 50,000 years of coevolution. 3 dogs latched onto a female hyena's haunches, their grips designed not to crush but to hamper. The hyena spun, jaws snapping, but couldn't reach her tormentors. Themba's spear found her throat while she was distracted. First major kill, but at terrible cost. 1 dog lay motionless, ribs crushed by a single bite. Nobody expected what came next. The dying female's last call triggered something primal. Every hyena in the assault became more aggressive, more reckless. In hyena culture, revenge is real. What the warriors did next broke every rule of engagement. The matriarch regrouped 20 meters out, her broken ear twitching as she processed the battle's flow. 4 of her clan lay dead or dying. The warriors had lost 1 dog and suffered 2 injuries. Kitchi's left arm hung useless from a grazing bite, and Morani bled from claw marks across his chest. The buffalo meat remained defended but accessible. Time for decisive action. What came next would rewrite survival manuals. The matriarch didn't charge again. Instead, she demonstrated why spotted hyenas dominate African nights. She began calling in a specific pattern: short barks followed by long whoops. Every surviving hyena responded by shifting positions. They were transitioning from mob assault to pack hunting. Young Gudo watched from his position near the southern fires. His grandfather's bow felt alive in his hands, the bamboo warm from gripping. He'd already loosed 12 arrows, with only 1 confirmed hit. 7 arrows remained. The mathematics of survival were brutal. 7 arrows, 15 attacking hyenas, 1 terrified boy pretending to be a warrior. Here's where ancient wisdom met modern terror. Old Kessie had been watching patterns invisible to younger eyes. He saw how the matriarch favored her right side, an old injury that made her left turn slightly slower. He whispered to Gudo in the clicking language of the Hadza, sounds that wouldn't carry to hyena ears. The message was simple: wait for the left turn, aim for the scarred ear, forget the body shot. The matriarch gathered herself for another charge, but this time with 4 subordinates flanking. They would hit the warriors like a living battering ram. Morani and Nuru braced spears they knew would shatter. Themba's last 3 dogs crouched, ready to die fighting. The moment stretched like sinew before snapping. In that instant, hunter became hunted as the matriarch led her guard in the charge that would end everything. But nature had one more card to play. While the matriarch drew attention with her frontal assault, 6 hyenas circled wide, aiming for the weakest thorn barrier. These weren't random soldiers but her own daughters, each a proven killer. They hit the thorns at full speed, accepting torn hides as the price for breakthrough. The barrier, designed to slow, not stop, parted like grass before buffalo. The warriors were about to discover something terrifying. Hyenas learn. Every failed attack taught them. They'd learned arrow range, spear reach, dog tactics. Now they applied knowledge with devastating effect. 2 daughters engaged the dogs, accepting bites to keep them occupied. 2 more rushed directly at the fire positions, knowing humans couldn't fight and maintain flames simultaneously. The last 2 went for the prize: the buffalo meat. This single decision would determine who lived and who died. Duma faced an impossible choice: defend the fires that kept darkness at bay, or stop hyenas from reaching their food. He chose fire. Grabbing burning branches in both hands, he became a whirling torch. Sparks flew as he spun between fire positions, maintaining the light circle that meant survival. His palms blistered, skin cracked, but he never dropped the flames. The spear wall formation, 4 warriors standing shoulder to shoulder, was pure improvisation. Hadza hunters typically fight as individuals, but desperate times birthed new tactics. Morani, Nuru, Kessie, and Kitchi formed a barrier between the hyenas and the meat. 4 spears, 8 hands, 1 purpose. When the first daughter hit their line, every spear point found flesh. She died instantly, but her momentum carried her corpse into the warriors. The line broke. Hell became worse. 3 hyenas reached the buffalo carcass. Their jaws, designed to crack open elephant bones, tore 100-pound chunks from the prize. This is the part archaeologists still can't explain: why the warriors let it happen. The answer lay in 50,000 years of evolved strategy. Let them feed, let them taste success. Greed would overcome caution. But the hyenas had made a fatal miscalculation. With meat in their jaws, they couldn't bite warriors. The matriarch, still circling after her failed charge, barked sharp commands. Drop the meat, continue fighting. But hunger overrode hierarchy. The 3 meat stealers tried to retreat with their prizes. This split the clan's focus: defend the thieves, or continue attacking. What followed would echo through history. Hand-to-jaw combat erupted as hyenas tried to feed and fight simultaneously. When arrows ran out, the warriors used everything: rocks, burning sticks, bare hands. Morani wrestled a young male who outweighed him by 40 pounds. The hyena's jaws could have removed his arm, but they were locked on buffalo meat. Using his knife, Morani found the soft spot under the jaw where major arteries run. Hot blood soaked the earth. Then, the impossible became inevitable. Young Gudo, down to 3 arrows, saw opportunity in chaos. The matriarch had stopped to restore order, barking at her disobedient subordinates. She stood broadside 40 meters out. Impossible distance for a boy with shaking hands. But old Kisi's whispered wisdom echoed. Wait for the left turn. The matriarch began turning left, her weak side exposed. Gudo drew his grandfather's bow to breaking point. The arrow flew through smoke, through darkness, through impossibility. The iron point, poisoned with concentrated toxin, found the one vulnerable spot, directly into her scarred ear canal, penetrating deep into brain tissue. The matriarch's scream, not a laugh but pure pain, shattered the night. Every hyena froze. In their matriarchal society, the leader's distress overrode everything, but she didn't fall. Instead, she charged directly at young Gudo with poison flooding her brain, jaws wide, death incarnate. This is where Duma's sacrifice saved everyone. The firekeeper thrust his largest torch directly into the matriarch's face. Her night-adapted eyes, evolved to see in near-total darkness, couldn't handle the explosion of light. Blind, poisoned, enraged, she veered past Gudo, jaws snapping at air. The burning branch fell into dry grass. Flames erupted, racing outward. What seemed like disaster became salvation. The spreading fire created a wall between hyenas and humans. Both species retreated from the racing flames. But humans had one advantage. Biology couldn't match. We controlled fire while hyenas feared it. The warriors grabbed burning branches, becoming armed with humanity's oldest weapon. They advanced behind the flame wall, driving confused hyenas back. Here's where evolution met its match. Every hyena instinct screamed retreat from fire, but clan loyalty demanded protecting their poisoned matriarch. The conflict created chaos. Some charged through flames, fur smoking, only to meet spear points. Others circled frantically, seeking their leader in smoke and darkness. The clan's perfect coordination shattered like bones under pressure. When pack unity breaks, individuals think only of survival. The fire reached the thorn barriers, creating an inferno that lit the night like hellish dawn. In that terrible light, the battle's toll became clear. 7 hyena corpses, 2 dead dogs, every warrior bloodied. And in the center, the matriarch writhing as concentrated poison shut down her nervous system. As the 13th hyena fell, something unprecedented happened. The matriarch broke. Not physically, though poison and Gudo's arrow had done terrible work. She broke psychologically. With her last conscious act, she gave the retreat call, a specific vocalization that overrode all other instincts. Even dying, her authority held absolute. The exhaustion gambit had worked. Both species had pushed beyond endurance, but humans had one advantage. We could think past exhaustion, while hyenas operated on instinct. When those instincts said flee, they fled. 7 surviving clan members grabbed the matriarch's convulsing body and dragged her from the firelight. Others retreated with whatever meat they could carry. In minutes, only corpses remained. But victory tasted like ash and blood. 2 warriors could barely stand. Themba cradled his last surviving dog, both bloodied beyond recognition. The fire had consumed half their thorn barriers and threatened the buffalo meat. Young Gudo collapsed, his body finally processing the impossible shot that had changed everything. In nature's arena, victory meant only surviving to face tomorrow's challenges. Dawn was still hours away, and wounded predators often returned. As the 13th hyena fell, something unprecedented happened. The matriarch broke. The matriarch's retreat signal shattered 2 million years of instinct. This wasn't mere pack behavior. This was evolution bending before desperation. Spotted hyenas don't retreat when they outnumber prey. They don't abandon wounded clan members. They absolutely never flee from smaller predators. Yet here, with 7 humans bloodied and exhausted, with numerical superiority still theirs, the matriarch used her final authority to save her clan from complete annihilation. The domino effect was immediate and absolute. Subordinate females who moments before had charged through fire now grabbed fallen sisters and dragged them away. Young males who'd scaled impossible rocks to attack now used that same agility to flee. The retreat wasn't panicked but organized. Even in defeat, the clan maintained discipline that had made them Africa's most successful predators. Here's what your survival instincts are screaming: pursue them, finish them while they're broken, But the Hadza warriors showed wisdom beyond violence. They held their ground, spears ready but not advancing. 50,000 years of experience taught that wounded predators retreating into darkness become twice as dangerous. The hyenas had conceded defeat. Pushing further would turn victory into massacre, and perhaps prompt the traumatized clan to fight with nothing to lose fury. The immediate casualties painted a savage picture. Kitchi's left arm hung useless, tendons severed by a glancing bite that had missed major arteries by centimeters. Morani's chest wounds weren't deep but stretched from shoulder to hip, where claws had raked. Every warrior bore bite marks, scratches, or burns from their own fire weapons. Duma's hands were raw meat, skin peeled away from handling burning branches. But they lived. Against every odd nature had stacked, they lived. 7 hyena corpses surrounded the camp. Each represented a small victory and a massive danger. Dead hyenas meant returning scavengers, meant blood scent traveling kilometers on night wind, meant vultures at dawn broadcasting the kill site to every predator in the territory. The warriors faced an immediate choice: defend the position until dawn, or attempt moving 1,000 pounds of buffalo meat in darkness with wounded fighters. What happened in the next 30 seconds changed everything. The wounded matriarch, dragged by her subordinates, managed one final vocalization, not a retreat call, but something else. Old Kessie translated from decades of observation. It was a territorial surrender, a sound hyenas make when abandoning hunting grounds to stronger clans. In human terms, she was signing a peace treaty with her dying breath. The saved meat told its own story. Of 1,000 pounds, the warriors had defended 600. The hyenas had torn away 400 pounds in chunks. Some carried off during retreat, others scattered across the battlefield. By Hadza standards, this was victory. Enough protein to feed their band, while teaching young hunters that courage and tactics could overcome superior numbers. Dawn's revelation showed the true scale of what had transpired. Blood trails led in 7 directions, showing wounded hyenas had escaped beyond the visible 7 corpses. The matriarch's trail was thickest. She hadn't survived the night, dying 200 meters from the battle. Her clan would face upheaval, as daughters fought for succession. The power vacuum meant this territory would remain hyena-free for months while the clan rebuilt hierarchy. Individual hero moments emerged as adrenaline faded and stories were shared. Each warrior had made crucial contributions that meant collective survival. Morani's leadership had prevented panic when overwhelming force struck. His decision to form the spear wall had saved the meat cache. Old Kessie's pattern reading had positioned defenders perfectly, anticipating every hyena tactic. His whispered advice to Gudo about the matriarch's weakness had enabled the impossible shot. Themba's dog handling had provided early warning and disrupted charges that would have overwhelmed human defenders. The dog's sacrifice, 3 dead from 5, represented partnership spanning millennia. Silent Nuru's whistled commands had coordinated defense when verbal communication became impossible over hyena laughter and combat chaos. His innovation of back-to-back pairing had prevented warriors from being isolated and overwhelmed. Duma's fire mastery had literally saved everyone. His decision to maintain flames rather than directly fight had preserved the light barrier that negated hyena night vision advantage. His burnt hands would heal, but his sacrifice had made victory possible. Kitchi, the arrow master, even wounded, had made every shot count, proving that skill trumped strength when precision mattered. But the youngest warrior owned the night's defining moment. Gudo's arrow into the matriarch's ear canal, 40 meters through smoke and chaos, shouldn't have been possible. Yet he'd made the shot that broke hyena leadership, that turned assured defeat into stunning victory. The boy who'd arrived trembling left as a proven hunter whose story would be told for generations. Medical treatment began immediately. Traditional herbs were crushed and applied, plants whose antibacterial properties modern science would later confirm. Wounds were washed with water boiled with specific bark that promoted healing. The severed tendons in Kitchi's arm were aligned and bound with sinew, a technique that might restore partial function. Burns were treated with aloe relatives that grew among the rocks. These weren't primitive fumbling, but sophisticated medical knowledge accumulated over millennia. The philosophical weight of victory settled as sun rose. They hadn't just survived, they'd proven that human intelligence and cooperation could still overcome raw physical superiority. In an age where people feared losing connection to primal capabilities, 7 men had demonstrated that the software of wisdom could defeat the hardware of biological advantage. Victory was theirs, but what they'd learned would echo through generations. The immediate impact rippled through the Hadza band, like rings from a stone dropped in still water. 50 people had depended on that buffalo meat for survival, and the warriors had defended enough to ensure no child went hungry. But beyond mere calories, they'd proven something crucial. That traditional methods still worked in an increasingly modern world pressing against their boundaries. The clan respect earned that night transcended normal hunting success. These weren't just providers but defenders who'd faced humanity's ancient nightmares and emerged victorious. Young boys who'd dreamed of becoming hunters now had contemporary heroes, not just ancestral legends. The story would be told around fires for generations, each retelling adding layers of meaning while preserving core truths about courage, cooperation, and tactical brilliance. Long-term consequences stretched far beyond one night's violence. The Hyena clan, robbed of its matriarch and strongest members, faced complete restructuring. Subordinate females would battle for dominance, while weakened numbers meant surrendering territory. For months, perhaps years, this section of the Rift Valley would remain free of hyena predation. The ecological ripple effects, more small game surviving, different scavenger patterns, shifted prey behavior, would reshape the local ecosystem. But the darkness hid something far worse, or perhaps far better. This wasn't humanity's first such victory, nor would it be the last. The battle represented something eternal, the moment when our species' greatest evolutionary gamble paid off. We traded claws for tools, strength for strategy, individual power for collective wisdom. Every time that trade was tested, whether against saber-toothed cats in prehistoric Europe or hyenas in modern Tanzania, we proved the exchange worthwhile. Historical significance emerged when anthropologists later documented the event. Here was proof that traditional ecological knowledge remained relevant, that skills developed over 50,000 years hadn't atrophied despite modern pressures. The Hadza warriors had used tactics probably unchanged since humans first competed with hyenas for carcasses in this same valley where humanity itself was born. Modern parallels abound for those willing to see them. When small teams face overwhelming odds, whether in business, sports, or actual combat, the same principles apply. Superior numbers mean nothing against coordinated intelligence. Raw power fails against tactical positioning. Individual strength crumbles before collective wisdom. The seven warriors had demonstrated truths applicable far beyond their thorny fortress. This is why you're alive today, because your ancestors faced similar odds and won through identical methods. They turned prey into predator through tool use, social cooperation, and accumulated wisdom. Every human living carries genetic inheritance, from those who survived nights when death laughed from darkness, who turned biological disadvantages into tactical superiority through intelligence and teamwork. The philosophical depth runs deeper than mere survival. In that blood-soaked circle, humanity's core nature was revealed, not as dominant through strength but through adaptability, cooperation, and intelligence. We didn't evolve to be strongest or fastest. We evolved to be smartest, to work together, to turn weaknesses into strengths through innovation and courage. The universal truth echoes across time. In nature's arena, courage and cunning still reign supreme. Physical superiority means nothing against coordinated intelligence. Individual power fails against collective wisdom. The Hadza warriors had proven what every human instinctively knows, that when we stand together, using accumulated wisdom and mutual support, we become more than the sum of our parts. 7 men had indeed faced 20 killers, and humanity's oldest wisdom had won.